Saturday, the 10th of April 1982, Shabbat Chol HaMoed. I'm sure there must have been generations in which the first person singular was less strident than it is in our own generation. It's hard to know because one never really can understand the past as the past was. We all see it through our own particularly culturally colored spectacles. We live now, and it has been called the me generation. And one of the questions which cropped up around our Seder table, the first night, was the issue of the first person singular against the first person plural, I or we. I can't think of any festival more than the Passover in which this tension is present. And the thrust of tradition very clearly is that without the we, there is no I, which is a hard doctrine for the modern American Jew to swallow. We are so convinced that we live in a world in which I have the right to do what I want. I don't have to give a damn about you want. It's my need, I want it now, and if you don't like it, that's just tough. You go get it somewhere else. We hear this all around. We hear it in the family, we hear it in the street, we hear it in the culture, we see it in the newspapers, it's all over the place. It's almost become the sole theological refrain of the 20th century, the me generation. I want it now. You don't want it? Tough, I'll find somebody else who does want it. And yet the essence of civilized life is the ability to restrain the I and acknowledge the fact that not everybody wants what you want now. That sometimes one has to hold back and compromise, and there has to be a little bit of unpleasantness, a little bit of strain, a little bit of tension. Maybe we don't want to sit through the Seder service. Maybe we'd rather watching television or going to a movie or being on a date or something. Maybe we don't want to come to synagogue on the first day of Passover. Maybe we don't want to do anything involved with the community unless and until it suits us. The same phenomenon happens when people join synagogues. Sometimes I think that people who come to synagogues to join synagogues represent open mouths. What can you give me? I have needs. What can you do for me, Rabbi? I want, Rabbi. A lady called our home at 3 o'clock on the afternoon of the first day of Pesach, when my wife and I were sound asleep, having had a very late Seder service. My wife always has to do these chores, picked up the telephone, and the lady was quite angry that the rabbi wouldn't come and talk on the telephone to discuss the meaning of Reconstructionism, as if that's all that rabbis have to do on the afternoon. I have some time now, she said. I may not be able to call him next Monday in the office hours. I want to know what his concept of Judaism is. It happens all the time. The curious thing, of course, very often in my own experience is that the people who make the least claims on me are members of the congregation. And among the members of the congregation, those who make the least claim on me, for the most part, are those who are most intimately connected with the running of the synagogue, the ones who are most likely to be considerate. Although, mind you, I did have a famous board member who always used to call me on the afternoon of Thanksgiving. a distinguished lawyer, no longer in the land of the living, who said that was the only time of the year when he had time to discuss the issues of a certain committee in the synagogue. And in those days, I was much too nebbishtik, as my mother would say, to say, okay, Mr. X, you've got time, but I don't. My family are around me. Goodbye, sir. I was very differential in those days, believe it or not. I was reflecting on this I and us, and how hard it is for our teenagers to understand that in the beginning is the us, and the me is a secondary derivation. The Rodin sculpture, which attempts to depict philosophy as beginning with one single man perched on a promontory all by himself, is myth, pure myth. No philosophy, no thinking, no language ever came into existence by one single individual sitting on a rock somewhere in the wilderness. Robinson Crusoe kept his spiritual heart together, although he was alone on his desert island, because he had with him a Bible, which was the product of a group. And he had language at his disposal, which was the product of a group. There is no way to be a hermit until you have first been part of a community. There is no way to be religious I or anything I unless one has first been part of the we. And this is one of the most difficult lessons to learn, and crucially on Passover. Lainey Bergman was talking to me the other day. I think she mentioned it at a committee. I can't remember where. Lainey is wont to these kinds of expressions of theological and spiritual concern. She says, I'm carrying a baby, she said. On one level, it's something terribly personal, how smart I am to have produced this baby. I feel very much in control. I wanted it, it's my baby. And she said, but on another level, I feel that all the waves of history are pulsing through me, that I am passive. Something is happening to me. I'm not having the baby is having me. That's what we're talking about. The problem on Passover is whether we can get in touch with the I and the we, understand something of the tension between them, feel them both, but remember that without the we, the I is not possible. Enough people who keep on coming to synagogues and saying, what have you got for me? And the synagogue closes its doors. I hate quoting a Kennedy in these days of revisionist Kennedy history. But if somebody says something good, one should quote it. Ask not what your synagogue can do for you, ask what you can do for your synagogue. Dependent upon the number of people in the synagogue in any generation who feel that they have an obligation to give rather than take, or to give rather than only take, the health of the synagogue endures. When that critical point comes, when more people want to take than to give, one no longer has an institution. I don't think anything could have been more symbolic of this congregation's health on the synagogal barometer than the presentation in the synagogue a few weeks ago, in which so many people gave unstintingly of their time out of all proportion to the actual event that we were celebrating, in a sense. I mean, the amount of time was prodigious. I mean, other people gave money, but time somehow, I think, it's a curious thing. Money is in a way easy. If you've got it, you sign a check. Time to give up other commitments and rehearse over and over and over and over again, and yet still more, and yet still more. That kind of thing is a symbol of the health of the institution. When somehow people feel they want to invest in the communal kitty, as it were, to put in. It's like a bank. Take more out than is in, the bank collapses. There are many ways in which this theme is expressed on Passover, the tension between the I and the we, and the importance of understanding the we. At our particular Seder service, it took a very interesting turn because we had a group of college kids around the table, and of course we got into a rather highfalutin discussion about the social construction of reality, which of course is what this is all about. That we are so much indebted to our culture. We are so much indebted to the we in order to be I, that we don't want to look at it and acknowledge it. It's like a child trying to separate from its parents, knowing how dependent it is, and refusing as a matter of principle to acknowledge any of that dependence. That is to say, there is a time when young people separate from their parents, that they cannot afford to indicate, even indirectly or obliquely, how indebted they are to their parents. The more awareness of that indebtedness, the less they can become themselves. Later on, when they're grown up and married and have children, if they ever get round to it, they can tell their parents how much they got from them. But at a certain point, it is vital that parent and child understand that the child has to say, me. And the parent, oh yeah, but look what I do for you. That's just stop, please. Stop doing it. Don't keep on reminding them how you changed their diapers and how you got up from the middle of the night and after all this, look what you're doing to me. Don't do that. Think it. Write it on a letter. I heard somebody the other day who has a book full of hate letters. When he feels angry with somebody, he writes a vicious, nasty letter, but he files it. I wish some of the people who wrote me letters would do the same thing. I think I should send some of those letters back with the suggestion that whenever they feel like this, they should put the letter in a file and keep it and then read them over. It'll like a personal aggression journal to get some of the juices working. Language is a communal creation. What we speak is a communal creation. Our civilized ways, our abilities to learn, to study, to relate, the way in which we love, the kind of things we find interesting, culturally conditioned. It was rather funny. Somebody at the Seder service who was a member of this congregation reminded me of a sermon I gave many years ago, which I'd completely forgotten, but I'm going to repeat the story because it's worth repeating. When I was reminded of the story, I remembered what it was. It was, I think it was an article in a magazine called Daedalus, which is a rather sophisticated article published by the American Academy of Science and the Arts. And it described how in some benighted village in Africa, a group of well-meaning people had decided to make a documentary to show the villagers how to keep clean, because there was some typhoid and some diseases in the area, and the latrines weren't being kept clean, and people weren't washing their hands, and food was being allowed to lie around so the flies could eat it, and dogs and animals wandered all over the place. So finally, they got this movie and they showed the movie. And the movie lasted for 20 minutes, and after the movie was over, the well-wishing man who'd come from this international organization to try to improve the healthways of this benighted village tucked away in Africa said, well, in the language of the villagers, what did you learn? What did you see in the movie? Whereupon the villagers all said, immediately, without any hesitation, as one man, the chicken. Does anybody remember this story? Yes, I forgot that story. The chicken, and the people said, the chicken? There was no chicken in the movie. Oh, yes, the villagers said. A very important chicken. Now, so the people who made the movie went home feeling rather chagrined and rolled the movie over again. The movie lasted for 20 minutes. At the bottom left-hand frame, for about 3 split seconds, a chicken had accidentally run across the room while they were showing people how to clean toilet bowls out. And that, in that village, where chickens were an economic medium of life, where the souls of chickens and where chickens played a role in ritual and sacrifice and the history of the ancestors, the only thing that the villagers saw was the chicken. And the people who made the movie didn't even know there was a chicken there. If I lived in some primordial tribe, the only thing I might notice in this room right now was a small creature crawling on the wall. It may be the totem of my ancestors. I would be preoccupied exclusively with that and see nothing else. My ability to experience reality is culturally conditioned, and nobody wants to hear this less than the 16, 17, 18-year-old young man and woman, especially not in 1982. Sociology professors have often told me that the most painful experience for their students in the first year when they're taking Sociology 1 is the knowledge that even something as intimate as falling in love is culturally conditioned. There, above all else, young men and women want to feel that what they are doing is me. I chose you. You chose me. Narishkeiten. Peter Berger tells a delightful story in one of his books of the young man and the young woman in the car at a nightly Saturday evening tryst, the young man whispering sweet nothings into the young woman's ear, and outside the car wanders the sociologist and the psychoanalyst, making notes. It's a rhetorical image. Inside the car, you, sociologist. Make of the car, year, cost, tread of the tires, cut of the girl's hair, where she gets her fingernails done, if at all, the way in which they speak, the accent. Is it a Texan accent, a Brooklyn accent, a Manhattan accent, a Boston accent? Where they bought their clothes, the kind of shoes they wear, how they get their hair cut, all those are important details in ascertaining what's going on inside the car, because the sociologist knows that, other things being equal, people tend to fall in love after certain other financial, material, occupational, and sociological criteria have been satisfied. The psychoanalyst is interested in whether the girl looks like the boy's mother, or whether the boy looks like the man's father. And indeed, having been marrying people for over 30 years, I wish Polaroid cameras had existed when I started as a rabbi. I would have taken photographs of every couple that came to me to get married, plus photographs of the in-laws, and I could demonstrate as a Euclidean theorem that although we think we fall in love with somebody who is chosen randomly, some enchanted evening across a crowded room, the reality is more sober. We are governed by law in the most intimate parts of our being. And after a while, when you get older, wisdom becomes acknowledging that fact. What Lainey Bergman was talking about when she spoke about these waves, as if to say that baby is a confluence of forces over which the woman has no control. Genetic, chemical, biological, cosmic almost, historical certainly, anthropological. All those forces converge on producing this particular baby. And that is the problem at Passover. Young people get irritated. Some of them say, well, what do we have to have a Seder service for? Yes, it's nice to have the family together, but what are we going through all this rigmarole for? The rigmarole, in a sense, is an affirmation that from time to time, if any organization, any institution, any ethnic group, certainly any religious community is to exist for any period of time, people, the members, the constituents of that group, in families and in congregations, have to get together and affirm those things that are sacred to them by repeating the sacred myths that come down from the past. By all means interpret them, by all means try to understand them, by all means adapt them to the most latest and up-to-date current idea. But the myth must be recited, the ritual must be done, the cult must be enacted. Nowhere is this image of the tension between I and us, which of course is Hillel's. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? It's a healthy thing to be out for oneself. But if I am only for myself, I am nothing. One can use this analogy of marriage. The essence of marriage is that there comes a time when husband and wife cannot say, I need or I want, but must make allowance for the fact that other people have needs also. Perhaps that's the most difficult lesson to learn in marriage. Perhaps one of the reasons why so many American marriages break down today is because people find it difficult because of this stress on realize yourself, do your thing, follow your needs. You can't have a marriage on that basis. You can't raise a family on that basis. You have a little congregation there. The nuclear family is already a little community. It's a little ethnic group. And the us and the we must take priority over the I and the me. The I and the me are very important. I don't want anybody to get the impression that individual religion, individual love, and the intimacy that goes on between human beings isn't beautiful and valuable. But the poorer the community is, the poorer the sense of we, the less valuable the meaning of the I. This image, this syndrome is widespread in the Passover season. Most of the Haggadah is couched in the first person plural. The Song of Songs, which indubitably is a love poem about me and you, was transformed by the rabbis into God and the community of Israel. It was turned from I to us. One of the most incredible religious exegetical phenomena of history. The church was so impressed by it that it took it over, and in the Christian versions of the Bible, you will see in the margin of the translation of the Song of Songs, Christ speaks, the church replies. This unequivocal song of love has been taken from that most intimate realm, a love poem in which a man is telling a woman that he loves her and how beautiful she is, and the woman is responding. Jewish genius took that over and transformed it entirely into the sense of community. We read in this morning's Torah reading, and I must commend Cantor Kornreich for the beautiful religious experience, those of us who've been here on the first day of Passover and today, for encouraging, arm-twisting, perhaps I should say, those who read from the Torah. I cannot think of anything that more enhances the spiritual quality of this institution than people offering their time and their skill. Everybody, almost everybody, including people who really don't have much of a voice, can do this. And I beg members of the congregation to come forward and volunteer to chant from the Torah. This is not only something that you spend time on, and it does something for you on some level, it is an enormous gift to the community. The fact that 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 you gave of yourselves today and on the first day of Pesach immeasurably enriched the spiritual experience of all of us who are here. We felt that this service was not just a service conducted by professionals, but a service which was participated in by the entire community. That is what I understand by us as opposed to me. I don't come to synagogue and sit there and say, show me, which is what so many people do. I can see them languidly sitting in the back row. Excuse me, no personal offense meant. The rules move forward. And sort of saying, you know, show me, do something for me. You can be assured that people who come anywhere and say, do something for me, will go away with nothing but sawdust. It's only when one enters a place like this, or even a concert hall, with a sense of participating in what is going on, or giving of oneself, that one begins to understand. And I know that the reward is great for those who participate. I know the reward is great for the children. I mean, Linda was one of the first in the field, one might say. She was the first to get out of the trenches and cross the barbed wire into no man's land. And anybody who saw her daughter, watched carefully her daughter singing the Megillat Esther on Purim, will know what I'm talking about. This was an absolute transformation. Children watch their parents very carefully, and they know what is important to their parents. I urge all of you, young and old, give us of your time. The cantor is only too delighted. Actually, the cantor said, and I understand, he said, it's easy for me to do it myself. And of course, obviously it is. But we're very indebted to you, Eliezer. I want to thank you personally. It made a whole difference for me to be in synagogue and feel that the congregation were giving of themselves. And so please do sign up for these readings. No matter what age you are, no matter what kind of voice you have, 3 verses. I'm looking at Myron. 3 verses. 3 verses minimum. It's okay. Haftarah, you can do a haftarah too. It's your way of putting something in. Of course we need your money. Of course we need you to serve on committees. But the real place where the giving makes a difference to the spiritual quality of the institution is the giving that takes place here. The kind of giving that took place on March the 20th. My only criticism of March the 20th, that without asking my permission, somebody switched the eternal light off. I was angry, modestly. I like to be consulted about religious issues in the synagogue. It's my responsibility, my obligation, and also my authority. I'm not a politician, I'm a rabbi. I don't follow, I lead. I objected strongly when I came in, but it was too late. The play had already started. Why did I object to the Ner Tamid being turned off? Somebody misguidedly must have believed that what happened on March the 20th was not religious, and therefore the synagogue had to cease being a synagogue. First of all, the Ner Tamid should never be switched off. And secondly, I can't think of anything more spiritual than the contribution of time and energy which those people gave to that particular production. It was very much, for me, a religious act. Well, maybe the light was switched off accidentally, so we won't make any more heavy weather about that. Let's look at page 228 in the Birnbaum prayer book. I want to give you one example, one small example of the richness of the interpretation of the Song of Songs by the rabbis. It may not appeal to you. It may not appeal to you, but it turns me on. The commentary turns me on more than the text. Let me give a brief prolegomenon, as it were, to this from the reading of the Torah, which is where I digress to thank Eliezer. In the reading of the Torah this morning, we read that beautiful dialogue between God and Moses. Moses says to God, "Show me your glory. I want to see you. I want to look at you," whatever that means. "I want to see you. I want to know you face to face. Let me have a good look at you." And God says, "Lo yirani adam v'chai." No man can see me and live. However, he says, "I know of a place, Moses, where there is a cleft in the rock, nikrat hatsur, and I will put you into the cleft of the rock, and I will pass by. You will see my back, you will not see my face." I notice with enormous interest in the last chapter of David Attenborough's book, Life on Earth, which is being serialized on television. He describes a tribe of Aborigines who, to this day, have a central religious observance which involves placing the idols of the clan in a cleft of a rock and passing it by. You can read this description. It's just a brief throwaway in the last chapter of Life on Earth. Somehow, there's more in this than meets the eye. We think we understand what it means. It means that human beings want to know what life is about, if indeed that is a legitimate question to raise in the first place at all. The rabbis don't get bogged down in the metaphysical implications of the question. They say, why did God want Moses to see his back? Obviously, God wants Jews to wear tefillin. How on earth would Moses know how to tie the knot on the back of the tefillin if God didn't show him what the knot looked like? So God walked past him with his tefillin, because God wears tefillin. God is a good Jew. Or rather, should we say, using the imagery of, I think, A.N. Whitehead, righteous men or just men make laws which they themselves observe. The essence of the democratic understanding of law is that you don't make law for other people, it governs you too. Not that the king makes laws and he is above the law, but that in a democratic society we are all governed by the laws that we make. So God also wears tefillin because he wants Jews to wear tefillin. And what Moses understood was that the answer to this rather metaphysical, vague, general question that one could discuss abstractly for months, I want to see God's face. God says, Moses, do me a favor, make a bracha. There was an old lady in the town I lived in England, when you'd go around to visit her, usually Erev Pesach, to perform some chore, or on Purim to take around the Shalach Manot. And before you even got into the house, the first thing this little old Yiddish lady from the shtetl would say was, mach a bracha. You know, not have a drink or eat a cookie, but mach a bracha, you see. The idea being that the benediction was the important thing. Subsume even as simple a thing as a glass of lemonade and a cookie under the rubric of Jewish religion. Asher Kiddishanu, or Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu. In other words, the first person plural, God and us in the bracha. In other words, affirm the centrality of peoplehood, and only then have your glass of milk. So here we have the same theme in the Midrash, in which the Song of Songs is transformed from a beautiful, intimate love poem between two people somewhere in Barbados. Why do I say Barbados? That's where President Reagan is right now, of course. It's the last image that comes to me from the New York Times, this morning's edition, if I may say. Page 220. You are beautiful, my love. You are beautiful. Your eyes are dove-like behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats trailing down from Mount Gilead. This is before women decided to have their hair short. I also think is one of the great tragedies of the 20th century. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep, all shaped alike, which have come up from the washing. All of them are paired, and not one of them is missing. Why is that funny? I suppose that's before Medicare. What? Is that funny? Is that funny? That he should say not one of them is missing? I don't know what the situation was with teeth in those days. Do we have a history of dentistry what was the condition of teeth in those days? Was it like in my father's generation, nobody ever brushed their teeth, but they all had a strong head of teeth until they died because they ate the right kind of food without even knowing how to spell the word vitamin? Or maybe the fact that it's interesting, indirectly, I suppose, one learns that teeth must have been missing. I presume that's because maybe caries was a reality even in those days. Or was it? Does anybody know about these things? There must be...
Cavities are a reality. There were treatments in full teeth.
But were they a reality in the biblical period? That's what I'm asking.
Before.
How do we know?
Because in one of Samuel Kramer's books, there's a description about how to do root canal work and get the worm out of the tooth.
Really?
Yes.
Remarkable. Thank you very much, Marion. I would have imagined there would have been some sophistication. After all, and the Jews had been through Sumerian civilization, and they were quite advanced in those matters. It does look rather funny to praise the girl and say not one of them is missing, or, today, of course, you wouldn't even have that problem. You could always get it capped. Your lips are like a thread of scarlet, and your mouth is comely. Your temples behind your veil are like a slice of pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built for trophies. 1,000 shields hang on it, all armor of heroes. This also is very interesting. It means that a long neck must have been highly desirable. There is isn't there a shifting trend in what men find attractive in women from generation to generation? I understand that some people are into feet, right? And there was an age when men wrote sonnets to a woman's ankle. I presume when an ankle wasn't easy to come by as it is today. But it does seem here because I was very surprised when I first saw the Tower of David. It doesn't look like any woman's neck that I ever admired. It's rather long and gawky. It looks a bit like a chicken's neck, very long and thin. So apparently they liked chickens' necks in those days, who knows. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, pasturing among the lilies. When the day grows cool and the shadows flee, I will betake myself to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no blemish in you. I don't think we need any evidence to demonstrate that is about a man and a woman who are in an advanced stage of the disease called love. Let us see what the rabbis have to say about this. I'm going to read it through in the Hebrew, first of all, because I think even those of you who don't know Hebrew will get a measure of what I'm saying, and the Hebrew is so beautiful. The Hebrew of this, by the way, is beautiful. There's nothing like the original, but I'm not going to read that again. It is just beautiful. Particularly the last sentence, Eilech li el har hamor, the el givat halavona, kulach yafa rayati, umum ein bach. Iti milvanon kala, iti milvanon tavoi, tashuri merosh amana, merosh snir vechermon, mimaonot arayot, mehararei nemerim. The overtones of each one of those words, the resonances, the music, the chords, are infinite. Hinach yafa rayati, hinach yafa. Behold, thou art beautiful, my love. Behold, thou art beautiful. Hinach yafa b'mitzvot. Hinach yafa b'gimilut chasadim. Hinach yafa b'mitzvat aseh. Hinach yafa b'mitzvat lo ta'aseh. Hinach yafa b'mitzvot habayit. B'chala, b'truma u'v'masrot. Hinach yafa b'mitzvot hasadeh. B'leket, shichecha, pe'ah. Ma'aser ani vehefker. Hinach yafa biklayim. Hinach yafa besadin betzitzit. Hinach yafa b'nitiyah. Hinach yafa ba'orla. Hinach yafa b'neter avai. Hinach yafa b'brit mila. Hinach yafa b'friya. Hinach yafa b'tfilah. Hinach yafa b'kriyat shema. Hinach yafa b'tshuva. Hinach yafa b'ma'asim tovim. Hinach yafa ba'olam hazeh. What's going on here? Would somebody who doesn't know a lot of Hebrew tell me what's going on here? I mean, those of you who do know a lot of Hebrew, I hope there's somebody in synagogue who knows some Hebrew, but what is going on here? What is going on here? Sheila?
Well, it sounded to me as though there was a complete transformation of the beauty, from the physical beauty to a beauty of obeying the laws, of every code, praying. Precisely. The most detailed things, not just general things. Circumcision, tefillin, sukkah, lulav,
etrog. It's funny they don't mention matzah. It's very funny. The one thing that is not mentioned here is matzah. You would have thought, hinach yafa bepesach, hinach yafa b'matzah, hinach yafa b'maror. I don't know why. It's not mentioned at all. Leket shikapea, the laws of tithes, the laws relating to the corners of the fields, the laws relating to the tzitzit. In other words, the whole thing, as Sheila rightly says, is transformed from being a love poem to being a celebration of the mitzvot, obedience to God. I want to draw to your attention something that we discovered this year only on the second night of Passover. Each year we learn new things. Never noticed it before. That the same verse is given to both the Rasha and the She'eno Yodea Lish'ol. I don't think I ever noticed that before. In fact, it was drawn to my attention by one of my children. The wicked son says, what mean you by this labor? Lachem v'lo lo. To you and not to him. He has excluded himself from the community. He is one of the me generation. He says me, me, me. And therefore he is wicked because he excludes himself from the group. He is only interested in what he wants to do for his own personal needs. Anything that goes beyond that, the idea that he might have to withhold the satisfaction of his needs in order the better to advance and enhance the quality of the community, is something which is beyond his comprehension. How do we deal with such a son? You deal roughly with your son and beat him when he sneezes. That is to say, you set his teeth on edge and you say to him this verse, Ba'avur zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti miMitzrayim. It is because of this what the Lord did to me when I left Egypt. Li v'lo lo, to me and not to him. Ilu hayasham lo hayanigal. If he had been there, he would not have been redeemed. The son that does not have the capacity to inquire, the mother is asked to at petachlo. The original text uses the feminine. At petachlo. You must open for him, whatever that means. Shene'emar v'higata levincha bayomo hurimor. And the same verse that is used with the wicked son, Ba'avur zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti mitzrayim. Now there's something curious about this. First of all, here we are talking about us and we, and yet quite clearly one of the verses in the Bible, which is quoted twice on the Seder service, talks about li, me. But it's used in defense of the group and not in support of the individual. Why do you think, I'm asking an actual question, maybe some of you in your Seder services discussed this point, why do you think the wicked son and the son that does not have the capacity to inquire? We're not talking about the simple son. The simple son can talk, he's just dumb. The simple son can talk, but all he can say is, what is the meaning of this? The child that does not have the capacity to inquire, we decided on Thursday morning, is the pre-verbal child, the child who does not yet speak. And the question is, what do you do with the child who cannot yet speak at the Seder service? And the conclusion we arrived at, on the basis of one interpretation given at our Seder table, was, Petachla, open his mouth and stop him, feed him, shtip him, and feed him. In other words, let him know that there are good things to eat at the Seder table, so he will associate Yiddishkeit with good food. We are a very oral religion. Now, why is the same verse used for the wicked son and the pre-verbal son? Or why does the wicked son resemble the pre-verbal son? Yes?
The only thing I can see is that both the wicked son and the pre-verbal son both have the needs. Although the wicked son feels as if he has the needs, and therefore says me. The pre-verbal actually has the physical needs at those points.
Yes, I think you're on the right track. In other words, there is a sense in which the preverbal child is uncivilized, is outside, is excluded from the group, not because he does it deliberately the way the wicked son does, but because he has not yet attained the level of being socialized. Any more offers? What is it that is going on in a child's life? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is it not the case that these fateful years when the family, society, but especially the mother is saying to the child, yes, I know you want to do it over here, but I want you to do it over there. Yes, I know we're going to have an argument over this, but we want you to become a member of human society. Yes, I know that you can attract my attention that you want some food by making these noises, but you must use the right words, because that's the way you get into a good school and go to college and become among the highest median income earners in the United States of America. I mean, yes, my dear, I understand why you don't want to do any of these things. You don't want to learn how to speak or how to be toilet trained. But what I had to tell you, the mother says, is, Ba'avur zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti mitzrayim. I also went through the same experience, and I am in a position which you are not, of being able to tell you that the only way you can truly enjoy the me, the li, is by going through all those processes of socialization. You don't agree? Don't agree verbally. Come on, what don't you like about that? Come on, it's okay. You've been here before, you can talk. No, not you. You can talk also. That guy over there with the beard, shaking his head in radical disagreement. Come on. It's okay. You can disagree. You just don't like it, but you're not prepared to verbalize. Yes?
We talked about the magic years in which the very, very young child is omnipotent in his own eyes. All he has to do is open his mouth and cry, and immediately gets milk or attention or love or whatever. And it's a tough road to go from that situation to some self-control
Right.
on his inner
Right.
self to start to belong to a greater group. So it's a struggle.
Right. I know exactly how you feel. It's a never-ending struggle, because on some level this is going on throughout life. And in a sense, you've added to the commentary, Leah, and I thank you, because you use the phrase which comes from that delightful book by Selma Freyberg, The Magic Years, which show clearly that in fact there is a sense in which both the wicked son and the preverbal child are egotists of the worst order. They are omnipotent egotists. Their world is their oyster. Nobody else has any rights at all. The world is in fact an extension of themselves. They imperiously lift an arm and food comes. They lift another arm and warmth and a change of diaper comes. And they have to learn how to move from that anti-civilizational, selfish, self-destructive, narcissistic, megalomaniacal me, which is only a way stage for becoming civilized. That is to say, the child can't immediately give up that sense of me to become a member of a community, and only after having given up that omnipotence and become part of the community and learned to delay the immediate need, will the child be able to experience the sophisticated I and the sophisticated me which grows out of the group experience. And I submit that that is a reason why we have the same verse for the wicked son and the preverbal. There is not wickedness in the preverbal child. We don't want to introduce any doctrine of original sin here. But there is something about the preverbal child, about the omnipotent child during those magic years, which has to be curbed and curtailed ruthlessly, because otherwise the child will go through life in the deluded belief. Some people seem to manage to do that, that he or she is the only person around and everybody else must subsume their needs and their wants to them. So, the wicked son is told, Ba'avur zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeiti mitzrayim. You live in such a way that what you think is a satisfaction of your personal needs is not truly a satisfaction of your personal needs. It is only when you have become part of a community It is only when you have shouldered the responsibility of being part of the ongoing history of the Jewish people that you can then say with any kind of authenticity and meaning, I, me. That is the highest form of expression of the first person singular. Every time a Jewish festival comes along, there has to be some kind of tension for modern man and modern woman. We don't need religion to the deep extent that human beings did in a world which lacked our technological sophistication. On some level, we still need religion as much as always, but there are certain fundamental fears that technology has removed from us. Somebody once said that even for Jews who are removed from tradition, the holy days of the year, the festivals, are times of the year when they feel uncomfortable. They don't do anything about it, but they feel a little uncomfortable. They do something else, they don't have a Seder service, they go to a movie, or they go to a concert, they talk themselves into the fact that they don't need it, and yet somewhere deep down, there's some kind of discomfort, because this is the way we celebrate the beginning of the year and the end of the year. And finally, one concluding comment about the curious phenomenon of Elijah, who comes to remind us of the future redemption. Redemption is of the group, not of the individual. Freedom is of the group, not of the individual. The first person singular is of the group and not of the individual. And Elijah comes to remind us that. He comes, in the words of the Haftarah of Shabbat HaGadol, to restore the hearts of parents to children and the hearts of children to their parents. And there surely can be no more meaningful sight, and there surely can be no more meaningful experience than parents and children talking to each other, communicating with each other, relating to each other at the Seder table. Tradition gives us the bare rubric, the 4 questions. But in the well-ordered Jewish home, the 4 questions becomes a place of departure, a springboard for other kinds of relating and discussion. I think the quality of the Seder service often depends not so much on the reading of the ritual, although I think that is indubitably a crucially important part, but the way in which the people around the table are able to respond and give themselves to the ritual. Elijah the prophet. For the first time this year I realized that he is kissing cousin to Father Christmas, except Father Christmas comes down the chimney and Elijah comes through the door. They both perform miraculous events, and I have not yet fathomed exactly what the deeper meaning of this connection is. What is the meaning of the supernatural stranger who enters the house either through the chimney or through the door? I have a horrible suspicion it has something to do with the Annunciation and the virgin birth, but we'll leave that for next year. I think I had to have some time to dwell on that. At any rate, Elijah comes in because Elijah reminds us that redemption is not something that just happened when we left Egypt, but redemption is something for the future. He reminds us that the people will be redeemed. There is no way to individual salvation except through group salvation. Evolution does not negotiate with individuals. Evolution negotiates with the species. And in the realm of human civilization, the same is true. Religion negotiates with the group, with the community, not with the individual. We become a me only when we have truly understood the us. And that us contains within itself not only the ebb and flow of all those marvelous historical events which Jews commemorate, but even ancient memories which go back long before there were Jews. The fact that we were once farmers, the fact that we were once shepherds, the fact that we were once planters, the fact that we were once hunters, the fact that we do not wish to separate ourselves from the past. The cup of Elijah is a reminder that in addition to the cups that we drink, Elijah will come, announce the redemption which is for Kalal Yisrael. I hope you all enjoyed your Seder services. I hope you all learned a lot from this year and will be able to enrich the Seder services, which I hope you will enjoy with your family and friends for many healthy and happy years to come. We rise for Aleinu on page 382. end.